Hi everybody, welcome back. This week we're going to take the foundation detail that you drew and we're going to continue up from the earth and add a floor system onto that foundation. So remember, I'm drawing in pen, but you're welcome to use pencil, and you're going to need your trusty architectural scale. We left off last week with a concrete foundation, okay, with a 2x8 pressure treated sill plate. And then we noted that the bottom of the floor joist is going to sit on that sill plate. So next let's think, this is too thin of a pen, let me try again. Next let's think about what kind of floor system we're going to have on this. And we've determined that we're going to use a 2x8 floor joist system. Okay, so remember 2x8 is actually how deep? 7¼ inches. So let's go ahead and measure our 7¼ roughly there. Okay, and here is our guideline for that. All right. Now, sitting on this sill plate, the floor joists are coming in this direction, right? But there's actually an edge joist or a rim joist coming in the perpendicular direction, and that's what we're going to see first. And it looks like this. Okay. Remember that this rectangle with the X in it means that we're cutting through a structural piece of wood. So that's going this way. I'm going to darken in this because this we're seeing this side of the floor joist. Okay. On top of the floor joist is going to be a plywood subfloor. Okay, and we're going to use a 1/2 inch plywood subfloor. Am I going to measure a 1/2 inch? Not really. It's going to be about like this. Okay. Now, we've been talking about the different hatch patterns and standard ways to draft these construction materials, and plywood has a very special one. Okay, with plywood, you're going to put this up so you can see it. Okay, with plywood, you're going to have a top line and a bottom line. And by the way, I'm drawing this at like full size, right? So it's going to be much tighter. Okay, and then you're going to have 1 or 2 or even 3, depending on if you can fit them in, um, hatch lines, and then you'll have diagonal double lines occasionally. Okay, so that's going to be your plywood symbol. So how do we apply that in this teeny tiny scale? Well, first of all, we use a thin line weight, and I'm not going to be able to get 2 in there. I'm just going to put 1 line down the middle. Okay, and then we have the double hash mark occasionally. So that's going to be your graphic symbol or your standard for plywood. And that's the subfloor. Now on top of that is going to be our wall system. And the first thing that's going to be installed is the bottom plate. And we're going to use a 2x6 wall system, all right? Because we're drawing an exterior wall. And here in California with our Title 24 requirements, it's pretty much required to have a 2x6 wall thickness. So remember that a 2x6 is actually 1.5 by 5.5, and you're going to measure that size. It's going to look something like this. And here's the X to show that we're cutting through a piece of structural lumber. So I'm going to continue my guideline up, and I'm going to put a new guideline right here at the edge of this wall, or sorry, the edge of that stud right there. All right. So on top of this 2x6 wall is going to, 2x6 bottom plate is going to be a 2x6 stud, and they are in this vertical position right here. Okay, so right where I've drawn the guidelines, those are the edges of that stud. We're seeing them kind of in elevation view. Next, let's draw an interior finish. Remember, this is our inside view and outside over here. So on the inside, we're going to draw some gypsum board or drywall. And I like to use 5/8. I'm not going to measure 5/8. Here we go. It just looks like this. It's going to come all the way down. And I'm going to darken my stud. All right. And the symbol for gypsum board is very, very simple. It's just a dot pattern. Okay. So let's use my thinner pen and add those dots. Teeny tiny dots. If you're working in AutoCAD, that's a sand pattern. Okay. So we're done with the interior, or you could continue by drawing a floor finish on your plywood subfloor and a baseboard. Okay. On the outside of our building here, so this is the edge of our stud, but what goes on the outside? It's our plywood sheathing. So let's draw our 1/2 inch plywood sheathing. And that plywood, by the way, is going to go all the way down to the bottom of this sill plate. Let's do that and end it right there. Okay. And remembering that that's plywood, let's give it the plywood hatch. And what kind of exterior siding would we like? Let's give it some wood shingle siding. And I'm specifically going to give it a 6-inch lapped wood shingle siding. And so that's going to look something, I'm going to draw it big over here, okay, and then I'll do it a little bit smaller over here. That's going to look something like this. Let's see. It looks like this. Okay, and then the next one tucks up under here. So, and then these are pieces of finished wood. So they're going to get that finished wood hatch. Okay, but that's quite big. When I said 6-inch wood siding, that 6 inches is from here to here, tip to tip. All right, and these things are only, I drew them quite thick here, but they're only maybe 2 inches deep. So let's draw some of those. Oops, I'm going to back up a little bit because before I draw the siding on there, I want to draw the waterproof membrane that's in between the plywood and the siding. And so just like down here when we had a thin plastic sheet, okay, we pulled it off of the ground. That's what we're going to do here. We're using a thin plastic sheet, but we're going to put, and literally they just put it right on that that plywood, right? But we're going to pull it off visually so that you can tell that there's something different. And I'm going to use a nice thick line for our waterproof membrane. Okay. And there's one more piece to this. There's a little bit of flashing that runs under the waterproof membrane, and then just a tiny kick out. Let's see if I can zoom in for you. So now that we've got the plywood, the flashing, and then the waterproof membrane, which laps over the flashing, let's draw that wood siding. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a gap, okay, because I still want to be able to see visually the difference between my siding and my waterproof membrane. Okay, add a little bit of hatch pattern to this. It's starting to look more like a wall now, isn't it? All right, there's one more piece to this construction, and that is the insulation. Here in California, as you know, we need to insulate, and we're trying to insulate this interior space from this exterior space. And remember that the ventilation is coming right in here, so this piece is also considered exterior space. So we're going to insulate in this wall and also between the floor joists down here. The excuse me, the graphic symbol for insulation is kind of an S pattern, all right? And to do it in hand drawing takes a little bit of a practice. It's going to look something like this. Okay. If you are drawing in AutoCAD, there is a line type that is an insulation. So you literally pick the two endpoints of your line and then give it that line type and tell it how wide you want it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to fill this wall with insulation, and I'm going to tuck insulation up against that side. Okay, at this point, we've drawn all of the pieces of our detail, and I'm going to, again, leave it up to you to do the annotation. So here's a couple of hints. See how these just kind of taper off? What we're going to do is use a like a cut sign, and it looks something like this. Okay. And if I was working with pencil, I would now erase everything that's above that cut line, and we could do it over here too. Okay. We have a couple of datum points in our drawing, and one is this first floor height, or ground floor height, whatever you want to call it. And here is the symbol for a datum point. Our second datum point is going to be the grade level or the ground level. Remember this one right here. And here's the symbol for a datum point. So that's the existing grade level. So we're going to assign the existing grade level the height of 0, right? It's kind of like leveling out your scale. We're just going to assume that that is 0, 0 feet, 0 inches. And then this is an addition problem, okay, to find out where your first floor height is. So remember that we had 6 inches, then we had 8 inches, and then this is 1.5 for the 2 by 8 thickness, okay. This is also a 2 by 8, and so that's 7.25 inches. Are you following along? And then we have another 1/2 inch for the top of the plywood subfloor. Okay, so add all those numbers up and find out how high your first floor is. This will vary for your different projects depending on how everything is put together, right? But it's important to know because then you'll find out how many steps you need at your doors. All right, everybody, this is your final detail sketch of a foundation, floor, and wall. It took us 3 weeks to get here, but you have a little bit more of an idea of how these pieces are put together. Thank you.